With 2024 in full swing means a new year of Star Citizen is upon us, which means more ships. But first, let's recap on what ships came out last year. These are all the ships that I predicted would come out last year in my year-old video, and these are all the ships that actually came out. I was mostly correct. I did get one wrong with the Spirit because I didn't think they would actually manage to go from concept to release in less than a year. The Mirai Fury and the Gataxiulin were the unannounced vehicles released last year that were mentioned in last year's monthly report. Now let's look forward to this year. What new ships will we see in 2024? Well, let's start with the ships I talked about in the last video, starting with the Polaris. Last time I talked about it, they did some internal rework of the ship. Now according to the most recent monthly report, the ship has entered gray box phase, with modular pieces done for the lifts, habs, corridors, and hangars. And according to the roadmap, this ship was worked on up until mid-December of last year. So this ship is in a pretty advanced stage of development, and there's a good chance that it will release this year. If I had to guess, probably in the second half of 2024. The reason being that this is a marquee ship of Star Citizen, and they usually release them around the fall. Last year was the Hull C, released in September. The year before that, the Corsair, released in November. The 400i in 2021, and so on and so forth. I expect the Polaris to continue that trend this year. Moving on to the Banu Merchantman, everyone's favorite alien space mole. There's been essentially zero progress made on that ship since I last talked about it. But why? Well, this was disclosed during CitizenCon last year. Apparently, the team that worked on it left in 2022. So instead of picking up where they left off, they decided to just put it off until sometime in the future. Which is kind of a shame, but it's probably for the best. I mean, after all, a lot of the features for the Merchantman haven't been implemented yet, and I'd rather not see this ship become another Reclaimer 2.0, where we get a big ship that can't really do anything for years. Same thing with the Karak, a big ship that's mostly useless. Even the cargo bay still isn't functional, which makes moving big cargo boxes impossible. If and when they decide to start working on the Merchantman, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes through another redesign. It would be its second redesign since it was conceived. They might even start from scratch, who knows? Till then, we're probably not going to hear about it for a long time. Moving on to the ships I haven't talked about, let's start with the RSI Zeus. Now this ship has technically been around since the game existed. According to the lore, it's one of the oldest ships in the universe, but it had many problems and technical issues, so it's been redesigned into the Zeus Mk2. This was officially unveiled during CitizenCon last year, and it will come in 3 variants. The ES or Essential variant will focus on exploration, the MR variant will be more combat focused, and the CL variant will be more cargo focused. As to which variant will come out first, I like to think the ES variant just because the interior looks less complex compared to the other ones. But then again, they may release multiple variants at the same time like they did with the Starlifter. I'm not sure when it will come out though. They did say they plan on releasing it this year. When they showed it off in CitizenCon, it was still in white box. And according to the roadmap, they worked on it until the end of last year. But the January monthly report says it's progressing through gray box, with varying degrees of progress in different areas. If I was a betting man, and I had to guess when the ship is coming out, I would say around fall this year given its current state. This is mainly because of the Crusader Spirit, which is a ship of similar size and was first released in October last year. So I expect a similar turnaround time for the Zeus Mk2. Next, let's take a look at the RSI Apollo, another space ambulance for those who tire of the Cutlass Red or the C8R. This ship was announced back at a time when Chris Roberts was just buzzing with ideas and the studio was shitting out new ship concepts left, right, and center, without the manpower to implement them. But people were a little more hopeful and naive back then, and after 6 long years, we might finally see the Apollo come to fruition. Last time they showed off the Apollo was in an Inside Star Citizen episode in October, where they showed off a work-in-progress white box build of the ship, and according to the roadmap, they worked on it for 12 weeks, up until mid-December. But that's about it. They didn't talk about it or show it in CitizenCon. So is it even coming out this year? Well, despite not appearing in CitizenCon, it only covers ships that they plan to release up until next October, so it can still come out in late October, November, or December this year. But will it happen? I don't know. Feels like a coin flip, honestly. If I had to guess, I'm gonna be optimistic and say yes. Moving on to the Anvil Legionnaire. This ship was announced back in May 2022, but we haven't heard much of it since then. Heck, even the roadmap says it hasn't been worked on since its announcement, so why mention it? Well, it was actually briefly mentioned during CitizenCon in the form of a silhouette which looks eerily similar to the Legionnaire. So they plan to release it within 12 months from their last CitizenCon. But will they? I mean, that's the plan, but anything can happen, of course. Unless the roadmap is lying, which is possible, someone may have forgotten to update it. It seems like they're going for a very short turnaround time of a couple months, compared to a ship of similar size like the Argo SRV, which according to the roadmap, took 67 weeks to implement. That seems very ambitious even if the vehicle teams work full time, especially when it comes with a new mechanic, hacking, which looking at the roadmap, was worked on until June last year. Now the ship isn't as complex as the SRV. It doesn't have any living facilities, no beds, no toilets, just a cockpit, a room with 8 seats for a boarding party, and a docker. I'll admit, after playing Starfield, I'm a little more interested in the Legionnaire. In Starfield, I can just board a ship when I get close enough after disabling the engines. But when I board a ship in Star Citizen, I would have to EVA to it from a considerable distance and shoot the doors open, and that's assuming the pilot is brain dead and the ship doesn't move. Might not have to do that with the Legionnaire. Although a co-pilot is required to hack the ship, which sucks as a solo player, I'm gonna have to get some distortion weapons and switch seats. Although they did mention NPC co-pilots can hack as well, but of course I think my grandkids will be enjoying it when that comes out. As for when the ship itself comes out, I don't know. Definitely not in Alpha 323, but they did plan on it coming out before October. So summer? September maybe? I don't know, but we'll definitely see more of this ship in the coming months. Next we got this mysterious ship. What's interesting is that CIG hasn't talked about this ship at all. It was only briefly shown as a silhouette during CitizenCon, suggesting that they plan on releasing it this year. There's a lot of speculation that this might be the new Mirai heavy fighter. I mean, it looks a lot like the Big Daddy version of the Fury. There is a leaked image of it online called the Mirai Guardian. Judging by the image and comparing it to the silhouette, even though they're at different angles, it's plausible that it's the same ship. But it's also the most blurred ship compared to the other ones shown, suggesting they might announce it pretty close to or on the release date. So they can release it any time. Maybe even Alpha 323. If not, then maybe perhaps during Invictus launch week, which would be spring this year. And that's all known ships that are being or have been worked on. There are also some variants that CIG talked about. Here is what looks like the new Argo Cargo variant. It's basically the Argo MPUV, but without the pod at the back, which suggests this might be the new base version, because the pod in the ship is supposed to be modular. So when modularity gets implemented and this ship is released, I believe they'll remove both the Argo Cargo and Personnel variants from the game just because they'll be made redundant and be replaced with this base variant. What's interesting about this variant is what's on the top front of the ship. You can get a better look at it from this short clip from a summer 2022 Inside Star Citizen episode. It could be a mining turret, like the one on the rock, which suggests that this ship could be a mining ship for gems, or it can be a tractor beam. The lore did mention that this ship can be used for search and rescue and munitions loading. Then there's the Crusader E1 Spirit, the luxury transport version of the Crusader Spirit line, which should come out this year. Honestly, I don't see much point in owning this ship. It looks about as useful as the Constellation Phoenix, minus the links. Good news if you're a fan of RSI ships, CIG announced they're going to start building capital ships one manufacturer at a time, starting with RSI. So once they're done with the Polaris, they'll move on to the Galaxy, and then the Perseus. The reason being is that they believe it will streamline the development process for their capital ships since they share similar assets with each other so they can get them out faster. Interestingly, they left out the Orion, another RSI capital ship, although that might be because they don't want to commit to the new gameplay features just yet. But hey, it could be worse. You could have spent money on the Merchantman. I wonder what will come out first, the Orion or the Merchantman. Also, there's an unannounced ship mentioned in last month's monthly report, which might be the Mirai Heavy Fighter, although that might be down to how they define the word announce. There was another one mentioned in the August and September reports last year, but that may have been the Sulin. Of course, since they're unannounced, we won't know until they announce it. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe and ring that bell, especially if you want me to make this a yearly thing. Let me know in the comments below what ship you're most looking forward to this year. For me, it would be the Legionnaire. Even though I would have to go through some extra steps to use it, it'll be cool to do some ship-to-ship boarding. But then again, it probably can't board every ship. Like the Crusader ships don't have any doors. Speaking of ships, I discovered that the Mirai Fury is the best ship for this one thing. You want to know what that is? then I highly recommend you watch this video right here.